Hi there. What you are about to see are highlights from our coaching calls. Our coaching calls are really great opportunities for myself and for our team members to dig in and answer our students' questions live, or if students can't make it, they can send in questions in advance. But it's our chance to give feedback on websites, on even client projects, and also answer any and all questions. And, quite frankly, you should have questions. You're learning something new. So, as you will see, we have blocked out identifying things, names and that kind of thing to maintain our students' privacy. But we kind of just wanted to give you a sneak peek into what it's like to be in these coaching calls. So that's what's coming up. Enjoy.
My first thought was, gosh, if I had to accept e-commerce payments, I think I would perish. That's way too complicated for me. Basically, yeah, the short answer is I have a personal website I made with Squarespace. There's no way to pay for anything on it, and that is totally fine. It's been working great. What I do instead, I started out with my PayPal account, literally just my personal PayPal. They have a new invoicing feature, which is as easy as create invoice, and you can just invoice via email and your client can pay online. However, I did just discover that they take a 3%, and when you're doing thousands of dollars of business, 3% actually adds up. So I've recently switched to Wave, which is just as easy and they don't take any percent, probably because they're selling my data, but who cares? I want my money. So that's my answer.
That's awesome. Yeah, the you don't have to worry about taking payments through your site, not even a thought. And whether it's like personal or business hosted, I don't even know what that would entail. Personal is perfectly fine. Yeah, Squarespace is a great one to build it on. I was going to say Waze, but that's a driving app. Wix, don't build it on Waze. Wix, Verb, Weebly are great ones. But yeah, PayPal is a great place to start out accepting payments for something easy. And honestly, even too, some clients still pay by checks. If it's a bigger company, the
That's
fun
true.
thing is, yeah, the
Yeah.
bigger the check, which is just so adorable, so 1998. I love it.
I think with the work I've been doing copywriting wise, it's perfect for an introvert because the only time you ever speak to people generally is like one-on-one or very small groups where you get feedback. You do the majority of your work either solo or collaboratively with maybe a designer, but you're not working hand in hand with someone. You're kind of left to your own devices and then you give feedback. And so for me, coming from a corporate career where I would be sat in an office of hundreds of people, this way I feel I work best when I'm working by myself, but can check in with people, and I've got Slack comments and things like that, and I communicate in one of my jobs. I communicate with someone through comments on a Google Doc. That's the only contact I've ever had with them. I've never met them. That's all I do. So for me, it's certainly no barrier to being a copywriter, being introverted. I know there's many people in the group who are. I know there's one or two who are not. A certain coach we know and love is probably the most extroverted person I've ever not met. But it takes all sorts. So the one thing that I would push you to really try and get over is that fear of one-on-one with a potential client that you're pitching, because being a very nervous and very timid on a discovery call, it's not going to come across incredibly well to someone where they're looking for you to take the reins and be an expert and lead them and show what you're capable of doing and sell yourself as an expert writer. You really need to project that sense of confidence, whether it's true or not, whether you feel it or not. You may be a swan all serene and gliding and pedaling furiously underneath, as long as it's not an upside down swan and all they can see is legs flapping, because that's just, I don't know where that metaphor came from, but you really need to relax in discovery calls and wherever possible and just be yourself and just treat it as a one-on-one chat with someone and getting to know you. Think of it as a conversation between peers, and if you can crack that, then you're going to find your success at landing clients is just going to go up and up and up, and that confidence will really make you even more confident the more you do. So it's one of these positive reinforcements where the more you do, the better you get, and the better you get, the more you end up doing. So if you can get over that fear, you're on a winning course. Yeah. So
and the way to get over that fear is to just do it sometimes. I know that I think people are surprised. Nikki calls herself an ambivert. I would say I fall into that camp a little bit. But genuinely, after this call, I will go probably just like sit in a chair and be like, oh my goodness, it takes a lot out of me to be in a more extroverted environment. That same thing happens if I'm in a large group of people, which hasn't happened in a while. Yay, 2020 for introverts. So it's getting good at practicing again, being out in the world. I threw 2 links in the chat that might be helpful for folks who want to read a little bit more and maybe process well that way of reading something about copywriting for introverts. So check those out. We actually recorded a podcast episode that'll be coming out in a bit for extroverts and introverts, kind of look at it from both angles. So keep an eye out for that. And Teresa put, there's an amazing TED Talk about power poses. You do them before an anxiety-inducing meeting. I love that. Find what works for you. For me, I found, so I hate to fly, which is funny because my brother's an airline pilot. So he get all the flying genes and I get none of them. What I found really works for me, which my husband hates because he was formerly in the military, so he is very on time. He likes to be very early to the airport. I like to be flying through security last minute because all I'm thinking about is getting through security last minute to make my plane, and I'm not thinking about the flight. So I hop on that plane and I'm like, thank God I made it. And there's no thought of, and Kate's looking at me with horror. I think there are a lot of people who are like, Stuart's looking with horror. That's why you get the TSA pre-check for us Americans. You can fly through security. Highly recommend it.
It's also when you get bumped off flights for being late, Kate. So, you know.
I've never been late, so I plan my time well. So I do the same thing with client meetings, believe it or not, is I will be up to the minute. I'm like, oh, 2 minutes. I'm going to go make a cup of coffee, which generally takes up to that. So then I'm flying into the meeting and it's like, hey, here I am. Granted, I do my prep work before meetings before that. So if anyone's like, oh my God, that's horrifying. No, I've researched, I've thought about the questions I have for them. I have that doc prepared. And I think being prepared in that sense is what's going to help you work through the anxiety of a client meeting. When you go into it completely unprepared, that's when it's going to be terrifying. Thank you. We've got the YouTube link. I'm guessing is that the power poses? Perfect. Thank you. Check that out for anyone who might want to take that for a spin before a client meeting. And please, if you let us know if it works for you. I might try that actually, instead of running last minute to my client meetings.
I'd also suggest when it comes to preparation, you can very easily over prepare, and if you do, you'll effectively self-sabotage because you're putting so much pressure on yourself to perform and be brilliant and get out all of this. Oh, I learned all this stuff. I want to tell you all about it, when it almost becomes a little manic. So it's just finding that sweet spot where you are confident enough that you can go in there and wow people, but not spending 3 hours reading every article I've ever written just because you think that's going to make you feel less anxious about doing the call. So, everything in moderation is always a good way to live your life.
That's a great point. And I do want to point out too, because I've done it before, where we kind of conflate being introverted with being shy, and those things being two kind of different things. In that, in the introversion, my energy is not necessarily, I don't get lots of energy from being in a large a group environment. I recharge by myself, whereas an extrovert might get lots of energy. I talked to someone earlier today who says, I love collaboration because I just get so much energy from everyone in the room, and I'm like, oof, I am drained from that type of thing. So knowing that, I think I consider myself a shy person, and doing this type of thing though, and practicing it in whatever way you can, getting on those calls with clients, the more you do it, the more you will get over that, or at least not get over it, but be able to and say, I know I can do that. I know. and remind yourself, if you need a bullet point list of all the things you know about copywriting, literally list it out. Like, oh yeah, I know features versus benefits. I know what a CTA is. Here are all the things I actually do know. Sometimes it helps to write it out and actually be like, oh yeah, I actually know a lot. And boost your confidence that way to say, okay, I'm going into this meeting. Here's the things I know that my client probably doesn't know. Or if they do know, they don't necessarily know how to do it in the way I will as the copywriter in the room. So having that, like, here's what I'm here to do. I'm an expert in this. That might help you as well. Sometimes just writing it out, because it's in our brains, but our brain, the part that says you can't do it, is going to take over and tell you that you can't.
Yeah, I think ideally, you're going to feel more confident and look more professional if you have some spec pieces and or a portfolio in place. In my case, I kind of was open in Facebook about the fact that I was becoming a copywriter and I was studying this. Just like in the group last night, I was commenting on somebody who was nervous about talking about their journey before they were ready. And it's not like, if you were opening an ice cream shop, you wouldn't do that in secret and hope nobody knew about this ice cream shop until it was 100% ready to open the doors. You would build up excitement. You would be like, hey, there's ice cream coming. Hey, look at our paint job. Look at our logo. Look at our, you would be drumming up excitement. And I feel like a copywriting business can be exactly the same. You can talk about it as you're building it, as you're growing. And so that's what I did. And consequently, I had people approach me and say, I would like to talk to you about something. And I ended up getting work before I ever had a portfolio ready.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great. I love that ice cream shop analogy. That's so good. I love that. Yeah, I completely agree. Like your next linear step is, yes, build your portfolio and get spec ads. But the more that you get into this, the more you're going to discover it's not quite as linear as some of us would like it to be. You, like, to Jen's point, because she started talking about it, even though she didn't yet have her fully built out portfolio site or her website and her portfolio, she started getting some clients. And, we'll say the same thing if people say, well, I don't have a portfolio site yet, but, or I keep saying that, I don't have a website yet, or I haven't built out my portfolio yet, but I see this opportunity that I really, really would love. Should I not take the opportunity? No, do it. If you see something out there that you're going, oh God, I would love to work for that company, or, oh my gosh, reach out, get in touch. What do you have to lose? There's going to be nobody on the other side who's getting your email and going, oh, well, they don't have a portfolio.
She's blacklisted.
Yeah, exactly. Go for it, reach out.
So it's a great question. I think the big thing here is you can have your own brand voice without niching down necessarily. So I would start with that, a tone guide for yourself, before starting to think about persona and the people that you're actually writing to. So when you're thinking about a tone guide for yourself, really think about who you are and how you want to present yourself to clients. I think the trap that I've fallen in it, and a lot of us fall into, is we want to write to every possible client we could get. We want to speak the marketing lingo so that we prove that we know what we're talking about. And it can be very easy. Again, I've had iterations of my website where I'm like, Kate, you don't use that word. You're using it because you heard a client use it once, and now you think it needs to be on your portfolio. So as you go through that tone guide, it's not going to be a quick exercise, but it's definitely valuable to say, how do I want to sound? How do I want to come across to clients? How am I different? Thinking about your USP, how does that play into who I am? And does that inform the word choices that I want to use and the language I want to use and how I want to come across? Am I more professional and, kind of buttoned up, or am I more conversational and casual, and that's who I am? Remember, your website is the one place where you can write in your own brand voice. Otherwise, we're always writing for clients, and we don't often get the chance to be who we are. And the longer you go writing for clients without kind of exploring your own brand voice, at least in my experience, Adele, I don't know if you feel this way, I think it gets harder to go back to figure out who am I? I've just written for all these different clients, and now I'm this amalgamation of all of it. To put that aside and say, no, this is my voice, and this is how I want to come across to clients. So before we go on to persona, Adele, I want you to feel free to jump in on tone perspective for your own website.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny, I'm a huge diva. It's that soprano syndrome. And so before I even thought about client writing, I actually did like a 1-day retreat with myself in my room where I put on my favorite music and I did like a mood board and I did all this nerdy stuff, because I really believe that if you don't know thyself and your voice and your values specifically for starting this business and how you want to run as a business, you know, it's going to be harder to stand out, I think, to clients, right? So that's how the Copy Canary was born, right? I did my own tone guide just like I would do it for a client, right? So I did the whole exercise of like, who do I want to serve? What words do I use? What words don't I use? I did the whole thing. There's an action sheet for that. I think it's in module 2. I did it as if I was doing it for a client. And before I even did any client work, and it firmly grounds me. And as a lot of you know about the Copy Canary, it's got a very distinct identity, and I don't think it would have had I not done the full action sheet for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and I love what you said about thinking about the clients you want to work with, but thinking of that in context less of industry, a specific medium that they work in, but the type of human you want to interact with.
Exactly.
So, I put, you got to the bottom, drinks on me. And that's very much my personality, my voice. And I thought, ooh, would that turn off clients who are like, ooh, she's mentioning grabbing a drink. And I thought, that's so, and it's not dumb, because I understand the instinct of why my brain went there, but do I want to work with someone that is turned off by who I am? No, I want to work with someone who we're going to get along on a human to human basis. And I can be okay not, working with clients who might be turned off by that or expect a more professional website. I've worked with a lot of clients who are their tone is very different from my website. And most clients understand that. And if they don't, I think that speaks to more of a difficult relationship that you might have than, oh no, I'm losing out on this potential client. So as much as possible, think about the types of people you want to work with, the types of humans you want to work with, not just what they're doing. And so for the other part of that question, create a persona, and you put in parentheses, ideal client. And so I think the idea there, you can certainly do a persona for yourself. And that, again, that type of client that you want to attract. So thinking of who are the types of people, and not necessarily, you don't have to niche too far down and be too specific, but do you want to work with broadly female entrepreneurs? I know that's a big one. So, and those are all big, that's not necessarily a niche, those are big groups. But then once you identify that, okay, I'm going to speak to my audience. And especially if you're part of that audience, it makes it a lot easier to make that connection and to speak to them.
I was just going to say, I'm opening up my tone guide here just because it's always good to look at it, because you got me curious about target audience. So I have a whole section on target audiences, right? Or the clients I want to work with. And this is what mine sound like, okay? Nonprofits and public interest organizations, right? Minority and women-owned businesses, educated progressives, people who love to travel and learn new things, right? Creatives and art organizations, like these are huge categories, right? And the way I came up with this list was like, who are the kind of people that I jive with and that I have either an affinity or some sort of expertise around, right? Whether that's lived experience or educational experience. So there's like 6 giant categories in my tone guide in terms of target audience. And now 1 year later, as I'm looking, I've done a lot more work with nonprofits and public interest organizations, right? But I didn't niche there. I kept my options open. And it just kind of a year later, that's where the business has happened to be. But yeah, I start big, and then maybe if you narrow, but
Yeah, that's a great point. And that'll come up again with one of our later questions, is that your website's not static. It needs to evolve as you evolve, and it's very easy to forget about it for a while, but remember that it can change. So you need to start somewhere. Don't let perfectionism get in the way of getting started and getting going. And knowing that if your client base changes, or if you do decide to niche down the line once you've gotten some experience and realize this is what I really, really love, and you want to narrow it further, then maybe you revisit that language on your website. And yes, it's a daunting project, but then you can go back and redo the brand to the tone guide for yourself, and kind of have a day to your, it's always good it's not quite the new year, but it feels like it should be the new year real soon. But as we come up on new year in a few months, that's a perfect time though to block off time in your calendar for yourself and for your business, and say, does my website, does the people I'm pitching, does all of this align with where I want to go? And if not, then do out that list. What do I need to update? What do I need to change to make sure that these things are in line and moving in the direction that I want to move your business? So whether it is yearly, biannually, quarterly, take that time for yourself to reevaluate where your business is at, where your website's at, and if that tone needs to change, if the people you're trying to attract, the clients you're trying to attract, needs to change or has changed.